Comics Coast to Coast is brought to you by patrons like you. If you'd like to help the show out, head on over to patreon.com/comicsc2c and show us a little bit of your love. Your sweet, sweet love. I mean, like $1 worth of love. And we'll take that love and hug it and squeeze it and make it do podcast things that you'll enjoy. So come on, see what happens.
This is Comics Coast to Coast.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Dunaway, and you're listening to Comics Coast to Coast, episode 331, the Maria Scrivan interview. Before I introduce Maria, shut up, Joel. I'll introduce Joel Duggan of Starcrossed Online. How are you?
That's me. I'm doing great despite the frost warning in Canada in June.
What? That's insane.
I'm not allowed to talk about weather on my other podcast, so I have to get it off my chest on this one.
Well, you're not allowed to talk about it here, but that is a little bit crazy considering it is June. It's hot here. However, let's not talk about that. Like you said, I received some interesting mail this week from a listener. Yeah. Oh, no, wait. It was from you.
Are you talking about other mail from a listener, or is it from me?
No, it's you. Physical mail.
Okay.
Physical mail from Canada. I live in South Carolina, and this arrived from Canada. I got a package unexpected, and it said from Joel Duggan. I was like, what did Joel send me? Should I have this scanned? But I opened it, and it is a book called Inklings, Cartoons and Characters by Bruce McKinnon. And this is a really interesting book. Thank you so much for sending this to me. What was the motivation behind sending me this book? Besides, it's awesome.
Besides the fact that Bruce McKinnon is an award-winning Canadian political cartoonist, he's also from Halifax. He is the first cartoonist that I was aware of as a young man that did it for a living. Right. In terms of that was local in my city. And because I think Garfield probably came before me actually reading political cartoons, but I always saw it in the newspaper when I was a kid. And I own this book as well as Inklings 2, which is his second collection. I don't really know if he's done more. I feel like he focuses more on just newspapers now. But I adore his line work. His gift for caricature and illustration in general, especially the proportions I find. Are just brilliant. And I thought, well, I have a second copy now. I know just the artist who would appreciate it. So I thought I would send it your way. It's a pay it forward kind of thing. It's my parents volunteer at a not a group home, but it's a business called New Boundaries that gives people with challenges jobs. Right. But they need people to supervise, and that's a volunteer position, whereas the people with challenges are paid. So my parents are some of the volunteers, and as a quote unquote, kind of feed, the organization says, hey, while you're helping organize the book room, if you see anything you like, go ahead and take it home. So Barry, my stepdad, always grabs comic books. I've had Herman collections. Now, I mean, these things are beaten up, and a lot of times they can't sell them in the New Boundary store to make profit because the books have been damaged or whatever. But every once in a while there'll be a book that is in really good shape. So this was an upcycled book, and I thought it would be good to pass it on because I already had a copy.
Well, it's in great shape. I've been really enjoying it this week. I've been opening it from time to time, and you're right. I love this artwork. It is much appreciated, and thank you so much for sending that to me. And good work.
Problem. Quick question I have. Is the political stuff lost on you? Because a lot of it's Canadian politics.
Some of it is, however, there's a good bit of American politics.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, there's a good bit of American politics as well. Yeah. I'm enjoying it. But thank you for that. I really appreciate that, and I'll have to forward something to Matthew Ducharme and Matt the Wad. He'll have to expect something in his mailbox for too much longer, I'm sure. Matt, how are you?
Well, I just want to thank Joel for not sending me anything in the mail.
If I come across another book,
today,
I know just who to send it to.
Nice.
And I saw nothing in there from Joel, and I said, "Oh, that is fantastic." So I had to thank him for that. Thank you so much, Joel.
Empty litter box mail to Matt.
All right. Well, now it's time to introduce our very special guest, Maria Scrivan. I hope I got it right that time with no hesitation. Welcome to the show. Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with us today. I know syndicated cartoonist, that's a lot of time. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your syndicated comic, Half Full?
Sure. So I have a syndicated comic called Half Full in newspapers and on GoComics. It's a daily panel. So I have one to do every single day. I also license my work for 8 different greeting card companies in the U.S. and U.K., and I do magazine work for Mad Magazine, American Bystander, Live Happy Magazine, Highlights Magazine, and then I have some other projects I'm working on top of all of that. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's great. Some of those little magazines are some of my favorites. I'm a huge nerd, but I grew up during a time.
As am I.
Right? That's the reason why I was like, we should interview. Absolutely. Get them nerds on here. Mad Magazine was a huge factor in my young art life growing up, and some great illustrators and cartoonists in that magazine, just so inspirational to me. As you as well, I saw that you were hanging out with some of the Mad Magazine people, not jump too far ahead, at this year's 2018 Aruban Awards.
Yeah.
How was that? Was that like
great.
You knew those guys from way back, or did you get to meet some legends?
Well, they're legends and hanging out with them, but I've known them for a while. I've been part of the National Cartoonist Society since 2012.
Nice.
So I've known Sergio over the years. I've got to spend time with Al Jaffe, who's 96 and still drawing the fold-in.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I don't know if you guys heard that Nick Meglin passed away suddenly last week, which was just a few days after us hanging out with him. I was at dinner with him, and a few days later, everybody is so heartbroken. So that was really sad. I know a lot of Peter Cooper, who does Spy vs. Spy. So through all these, and I live in Connecticut, very close to New York. So when Mad recently had a farewell party for their last issue in New York, and I was there with a bunch of people, and the boxes were all boxed up in the office. And then out of coincidence, I was in LA shortly after when it moved to LA. So I went to the new office and saw the same boxes still unpacked on the other side. So it's been great to work with them, and it's a really fun. It's sort of like a childhood dream come true too, because I loved Mad growing up as well.
That's great. So if they had only have known, they could have saved a few dollars and put some of that stuff in your luggage, right? They could have just said,
right. I could have just brought it with.
Just meet us there, right?
Just brought it with me. Yeah.
Always trying to save $1. Mad Magazine, I love it. Love it.
Yeah,
okay.
It's great. And go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I just gonna say the Aruban Awards are great. It's like a big family reunion every year, so it's a lot of fun. And the Cartoonist Society. We do so many other things. Like we do outreach, they do USO tours, and we draw for kids in hospitals and stuff. So it's a really cool community. It's really great to see everybody. I wish I could see everybody more often, but at least I get to see them once a year, which is nice.
That is nice. So I saw that. I saw pictures from that event and both events, and I saw that on your Instagram site. So if you're listening, hop on over to Instagram.com/Maria Scrivan. And it is MariaScrivan. And if you go to the show notes on the website, there'll be links there, as well as Maria's website and Twitter account, and the GoComics website, which is a great place to read comics. I like reading the comics there, going back and seeing my syndicated cartoons from there. It's GoComics.com/half-full. Is the best way to get to it, I believe. So
you got it. Thank you.
You've been doing Half Full. Did you say since 2012 or prior?
I joined the Cartoonist Society in 2012. Half Full, I think, got picked up. Let's see if I get all my dates right here. By GoComics in 2013.
Right.
And then I had done a guest week for the syndicated comic Rhymes with Orange.
Oh, nice.
So. Yeah, it was really cool, and I love Hillary. She was great, and I really can't thank her endlessly for the opportunity as well, because Rhymes with Oranges in my local paper here in Stamford and in Greenwich, where I grew up. And shortly after I got picked up by GoComics, my local papers called me and said, "Oh, we really love your comic. Do you want to be? Can we put it in the newspaper every day?" And I was like, "Oh, twist my arm. Let me think about that for a minute." So that was sort of like my first self-syndication, and really fun to see. That was my big childhood dream come true, because one of you guys mentioned Garfield. When I was a little kid, it was like Garfield, 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 and I just wanted to be a cartoonist because of Garfield, and I wanted to be in the newspaper, in the funny pages. So that was it. And then shortly after that, I got picked up by Tribune syndication in 2015. So I'm coming into my 5th year of Half Full. September 9th, I think, was the birthday. So 5 years, which is amazing to me because... Thank you. And I remember when I had pitched GoComics. GoComics, you can do a comic one a day, 3 a week, whatever. You can do, 1 a week, 3 a week, whatever, however you want to do it. But I knew that my end goal was newspaper syndication. So I was like, I'm going to do 7. And it was such a stretch in the beginning because I wasn't used to that. I was just like, it was a whole new thing and it was really hard. And now I can do 7 pretty much in a day. As long as they're all written. They have to be, like, I have to at least have the concepts down, although those may evolve once I get into it, but usually a day, and then it'll spill into a day and a half, which gives me room to do other stuff that I'm working on during the week. So, but yeah, it was a big stretch in the beginning for me. That's
something a huge stretch. We talked to Hillary Price back in 2010 on episode 92 of Comics Coast to Coast. Yeah, that was a great interview. It's interesting to think about tackling a 7-day a week comic strip now, and in some ways my mind is like reeling, going, was it tougher during the heyday during the 80s and 90s, or is it tougher now? Because back during the 80s and 90s you probably had less life distractions, but trying to get everything put together was a lot more physical. It was a lot more.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but now life is so hectic and moves so fast. How do you do 7 days a week?
I think about that whenever I see like old architecture in Europe or Renaissance paintings. I was like, they had nothing else to do but work on this thing. And I'm so fascinated because and they didn't have power tools, so I don't know where these buildings actually came from. It doesn't make any sense, but I know we have so much. It's crazy, the amount of distractions. It's absolutely bananas. And I'm not good at managing them. I'm not. I'm a sucker for somebody sent me a notification, which is terrible.
And you just recently got back. Right. So you talked about this architecture you saw. Was that from your recent visit to the national, what was it, National Cartoon Convention of some, what was the name of it exactly? I can't recall now.
It's the Shrewsbury International Cartoon Festival in a little town called Shrewsbury in the UK, about 2 hours outside of London. And I was invited to draw. They have this festival in the middle of this town. They asked me to do a write-up, and I literally said that I wouldn't have been surprised to see a knight jousting a dragon to save a princess, because it was this 10th century castle, all these beautiful Tudor buildings, and it really looked like you were in a storybook the whole time. It really felt like being in a fairy tale. So we were drawing on the street these big 6-foot by 9-foot blow-ups of a cartoon, and all the people from the town, thousands of people came out. I met the mayor. She came out and was telling me all about, she was wearing all this cool regalia. I don't even know what it was, but she was telling me all about it. And the town really loves it. And they have people playing music, and it was really cool. And we were staying in this old hotel that, so the town, claim to fame of the town is Darwin grew up there. So apparently Darwin stayed in this hotel, and so did Charles Dickens, which is crazy, right? And Paganini played there. And it was just this really cool event. I really, really enjoyed it. And then while I was there, because I went to Amsterdam to see the tulip fields because they were in bloom and incredible. And then I love Paris, so I stopped in Paris after. So that was my good cultural fix for a little while there.
I love that. And I enjoyed seeing not only your pictures from that event. You also did some inspirational artwork from that time. There's one picture that you did. Looks like watercolor, and you have. I'm assuming this is supposed to be you riding a bike with an umbrella and a bird on the front of a bike.
Oh yeah, it wasn't supposed to be me, but yeah, that did come from. I was in Amsterdam spikes everywhere, right? It's like a commuter
right.
peloton. It's crazy. Like I got really good at every time I went to cross the street, I was like left, right, okay, go, because there would be bikes flying by. And I saw this bike that looked like it had a bird cage. It was this weird, like I don't know what the system was. It was like this kind of cage system on the front. So it's like that looks like a bird cage. So that's where that came from. And people were riding in the rain with umbrellas too, which I thought was really cool. So kind of it was like an amalgam of those different things that I saw.
There's no way, and living in the South of America, well, South Carolina in America, there's no way. Somebody would not ride around on a bike with an umbrella. They just wouldn't do it. They just wouldn't do it.
I know.
Too much pride.
It was so cool.
Around here it wouldn't be pride, it would be danger with the wind in Dartmouth, Halifax.
Oh,
nope.
yeah.
Like driving down the street with a sail, no.
Right.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Turn left, you go one way, and then turn right, and you're still going left.
We have a we do have a very anti-bike mentality where I live, but where I live is a lot of long roads and not much city. And so if you're on a bike, they're like, what are you doing? Did you lose your license? It's like, no.
Oh, that's funny.
We're just trying to be healthy. What do you want from me?
I live in I've been a cyclist for a really long time, and I live in a really good, where I live in Connecticut, there's some really gorgeous, beautiful, windy roads.
Nice.
People don't seem to run errands as much on bikes as they did in Europe, I guess, but I'm trying to change that single-handedly because it's fun.
So around here, it's all about the hills because it's similar to like San Francisco or Boston downtown. Like it's a glacial harbor city.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's like, which way are you going? Up or up?
Right.
So, okay. So I want to talk just a little bit about Half Full. The very name implies that this is a optimistic look at life, I hope. And so I just got to ask, how do you stay positive, Maria, when so much of the world today seems to be negative, especially on the internet?
I know, isn't it bad?
It's hard.
I know. I got rid of television in 2001.
Oh, nice.
I have not had cable television. Not to say that I never watched TV. I thank God for Netflix. For a while there, it was DVDs, and now, thanks to Netflix, Hulu, whatever. So I kind of cut out that sensationalism part, and I didn't realize how intense it was until Hulu had a program for a while. I think you can get Hulu Live on an iPad. It's like $40 a month, and you get live TV, right? So it was around the time of Hurricane Irma, and I had friends in Florida. I was like, oh, I'm going to try this out. I'll get live TV back. I want to see what's going on. And they were so crazy, sensationalist and intense. And it was almost like they got happy when someone died. And I was like, oh yeah, that's why I don't. So I sort of avoid that. I read most of my news online, but things are so crazy right now. I have a hard time even reading the New York Times. I'm like, oh yeah, there's another thing to worry about. So
totally.
I guess it comes down to focus. And in a way, the comic itself is therapeutic because I can, make fun of something silly in our lives. Right. And I guess it's optimistic, but tongue in cheek, because I end up writing a lot about things that are annoying too. So, I try and find a relevancy in things that are bothering us. And a lot of the time it's stuff that's, very personal. Like I can't put my phone down. I'm not talking about other people. I'm talking about myself. And if other people can relate to that, that's great. But so I'd like to focus in general. I like to focus on positive things instead of negative things. I think sort of like a life philosophy, but
this is a thing that I have struggled as both, entertainer and content creator. I often find myself, I'll get so down with all the negativity, just the negative things that are heading our way, whether it be, as soon as you turn on your phone, there's negativity in an email or spam, and just if you turn the TV on, there's this, like you said, they seem to almost celebrate bad things. It's like why is the news 15 minutes of the death report? Why is that the only news? And also even all the way down to the commercials, because I'm with you. I just stopped watching the news at some point. I was like, I can't watch this crap. But that didn't even save me, because the commercials every 5 minutes was some commercial for some drug for some random symptom that I had. And I was just like, the whole thing just so much negativity. So what is the value of entertainment and content creation like what you're doing? At one point in time, I didn't have very much value in it for myself because I was like, what am I doing? What am I really changing the world, making dumb jokes and this? And I was so down on myself. But eventually I was like, oh my gosh, this is like one of the most important pieces of work we can do in society today, besides actually going and actually helping someone physically, locally to you. If you can reach out to other people and bring that half full mentality, just that's work there, my friend, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, when I get feedback, I agree totally. I think right now it's more important than ever. We need laughter. We need just silly things to laugh at now more than ever because things are heavy. And that's when I get emails from people that tell me, thank you for this. You know, I look forward to reading your comic every day. That's what makes it all worth it. I feel like my business is like making people laugh, which is great. I mean, that's a good mission. That's a good mission in life, right? My goal is to bring people joy and happiness. So if it works, great.
If it works, it works. And
with putting that kind of a positive foot forward, given how divisive the internet can be, regardless of the content, have you found that that's been reflected in like your followers and engagement and comments and stuff like that on social media?
I'm pretty lucky. I don't get, there's always a couple people that have to say something ridiculous, but in general, and I don't read it's really funny. I don't really read too many of the comments on GoComics, but my mom does. So if somebody says something, she'll text me, can you believe this person? I'm like, Mom, I don't read. But in general, I haven't. I had one really funny situation. I did this comic that was like a long time ago. I don't know if it was back in 2012 or whatever. It was before smartphones, after smartphones. So before smartphones, people were having a conversation. Afterwards, everybody having a conversation, asking about something. Afterwards, everybody was just not talking on their phone. Right. So it was like some of the biggest social media engagement I ever got. Somebody took it and put it online and said that I hated millennials and that I was an old ass cartoonist, their words, and that people like you hate young people. And it was about me. It was literally about me and my friends, and it was an observation. So that was that was like the biggest fiasco. But in general, I don't get too much like hate mail, and which is nice. I mean, usually I get positive feedback, which is good. I mean, people always have weird, you never know what's going to strike somebody in a weird way. I got in trouble for this one. I had a dog at Heaven's Gate, and he was looking at St. Peter, and St. Peter said, not all dogs go to heaven. And I was just doing the play on words. I have a dog. I love my dog. The dog didn't get hurt. I didn't even say he wasn't going to heaven. People got so mad at me. They're like, what? All dogs go to heaven. How could you? And I was like, oh my God, I totally screwed up. Like, I didn't even think it was going to go down that road. Right. I was just trying to twist the words, but you can't really.
It's an animated feature. It's got to be true anyway. It doesn't matter what your opinion is.
Oh, thank God it wasn't animated. Thank God it wasn't. There was no movement in it. Can you imagine?
Right.
Yeah. So I guess I try and I try and avoid mean-spirited humor. I'm not out to hurt anybody or make anybody feel bad, but in the end, you never really know what people's perceptions are. Right. So I can't begin to guess. But it is a bummer, though. I feel bad about just the internet. I think all the time, would people be having this conversation in an elevator, face to face? Like this weird bravado people have behind a keyboard, especially with political stuff. Forget it. Right. I just don't understand how that happened. It feels like it's almost like road rage, but with a keyboard, and like people have to attack people, and this is like how they do. Like they have some energy, they have to get out. This is how they do it. So, it's too bad. It's too bad in that place.
We separate ourselves, just like you say, like we do in cars. You no longer see the other person as a person. You just see them as like competition. It's like, and so it's
a target, really.
Yeah, really a target. Yeah. Oh, can't stand it. Also, I don't like how the media kind of portrays this ongoing war between millennials and other generations. I'm like, there's really day to day. I never really see, old people going, I hate millennials, or millennials going, I can't believe you stupid old people. It's such an internet isolated thing. That's the only time I ever even see any discussion about it is there. It's not like I see anywhere else. I don't know. It is weird. Whatever.
It's a weird time. It's a weird time. But yeah, so you just have to focus. I mean, but it's a choice, right? You have to pick what you put your energy on. So
true story.
Just might as well be something good, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, with all of the things that you have to say about the observations that you've made. What pulled you towards a single panel comic instead of a more traditional comic strip where you might have more time to write dialogue and say, like have more time to write deeper commentary?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess the kind of gag panel format always came naturally to me. And I had so many of them sort of piled up that I thought, that's what I ended up pitching. And I've tried I tried a comic strip idea that I didn't even, I pitched it, but I hadn't put, a ton of time and energy into it. And weirdly enough that you say that, I have another concept that I'm kind of playing with, because I like the idea of ongoing characters and conversation, which literally what you just said, I like the idea of being able to play that out in a longer conversation than just a one-shot deal of, here we are. Now, in the panel, I do like the idea of the variety of different characters, different scenes. Every time it's like setting the stage, picking the cast, having the conversation, and then it always changes. So I would like to kind of experiment more with consistent characters in a traditional strip format.
Right. I agree. It's always a toss-up. Single panel, full characters. Joel went with full characters. Now he wishes he had single panels. Right, Joel?
Isn't it funny? Yeah, it's like...
Right.
The only regret that I have in terms of the characters is the drawing style, which, I mean, is just my natural style. But my issue is that, like, when I do a strip, it's a full 8-hour day. Like, it takes me that long to do it. So, and I've never had any plans to take Starcross to syndication. It's always just been, now it's when I have time, but it was at one point a weekly webcomic. And that's all I could have time for. I could squirrel away my part of my Saturday and all day afternoon, Sunday to pencil it and ink it. And that was kind of it. The rest of the work week had to be focused on other stuff.
Right.
But I've often thought about, like, I see a lot of the stuff right now on Instagram, and I thought, like, man, you've got all these strip cartoonists that are having to break up their panels, either stack them in 2x2 or go panel by panel. And I enjoy reading the panel by panel. But if it's a strip in traditional sizing, then it's not square. You're kind of dealing with vertical rectangles and stuff. And if they're long, then it doesn't fit and all that kind of thing. But a single panel gag translates to social media just so well. Like, you almost don't need a website. Like if Half Full wasn't syndicated, then something like Instagram or Twitter would be perfect. For the long scroll of all your readers just kind of like seeing it when it comes up in their feed, sort of thing.
And the other thing too, I realized it sort of is good timing for panels, and I didn't, predict this. But we're in this weird meme mentality where people are going 100 miles an hour and they don't want to read more than one line.
Yeah.
So it kind of works well. I mean, even, I know a lot of the editorial cartoonists are having issue with there's like so many memes right now. Like, everybody's an editorial cartoonist kind of thing. But I think that's part of the process that I love too, is chopping the words down to get it to the most succinct message. So in a way, it works well. And luckily the sizing, I can squish it slightly on Instagram. So it's not a perfect square, but it fits within that space, which is good. But my Sundays, just like you're saying, my Sundays are strange. So I'm actually thinking of, just for social media, redrawing the Sundays in a different format as well so that they fit. Because otherwise they get squished and you can't really see them.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with Instagram, at least you can now upload images that are not square. Like, you can say, don't crop this. But if it's a weird shape, then there's a lot of white space and it appears too small. I've had that problem before. Yeah. So I'm curious, actually, when you mentioned the, condensing the joke and the verbiage down to like the most minimal possible. I noticed with your panel, the joke, if there is like a, what's what I'm looking for, a caption, it's inside the drawing, as opposed to underneath it, like Herman and what is it, Farside? I think when I was reading those in the papers younger, they always had like a typed thing underneath, where yours is a hand-lettered thing inside the comic.
Yeah. Huh. That's funny. Right. I don't know why I made that. I think part of it why it works, I don't remember why I made that conscious decision. I remember flipping back and forth, but one of the reasons that it works well for me is a lot of my comics get translated into greeting cards. And with greeting cards, you want the joke in the top third. So when it's on the rack, you want to be able to see the joke right away. So it works out well for me to have it in the bubble. And I also kind of like it contained. And then for social media, it works well too, because a lot of the time people like to crop things off, like my signature. So it works well to have it in there. But I don't remember what my thought process was, why I went with that. I'm sure I had a reason at the time, but it worked out, whatever my reason was.
Right.
I'm sure I've seen other panel comics that do it, but I can't recall one.
Oh, sure. Bizarro, Hillary's, Ron Zadaris does.
Yes.
A lot of panels do. I think, let's see. Yeah, quite a few, actually, that I'm thinking of off the top of my head.
A lot more of the modern comics.
So it just happens to be my... And then this thing, like, I haven't read a newspaper and really done a lot of online comic consumption in a long time. I mean, I read stuff when we have guests, but I don't really read many comics. I think the only comic strip I read right now is Zits. That's about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. So speaking of, single panel comics that had text underneath it, had you guys seen the latest screenshots of the translation of the Addams Family comic based on the original Addams Family comic? Did you guys read the Addams Family back in the day?
No.
Wow. How
cool. It was so good. It was so unique and odd. Like I said, I used to be a big fan of the Addams Family, not within my timeline, but I've got plenty of books, and I went back and watched it. And now they have a new thing. It looks like, so far what I've seen from the screenshots, that this new feature is going to be like stop motion kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but the only thing is, I'm not quite sure how I feel about it yet, because I've only seen the shots. But I always loved the black and white look of the comic strip, and this is going to be colored.
I was just about to ask you that.
Yeah, it's going to be colored. I would prefer it. Yeah, it's muted.
I mean, the colors are pretty mute.
Right, but there was something so good about the creepiness of the Addams Family being in black and white, and I'm just. Look at me. I'm an old man. Look here, you millennials.
Yeah.
You don't have any idea. No, I was kidding.
They're still pretty creepy. And apparently the character designs,
And
right.
Yeah. Right. The character designs apparently are very close to the original.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I want to find
strip.
it.
Certainly inspired by. I think it looks really good. I mean, I like
hopes.
I like how they don't. Well, it's funny. I just talked about this on my other show, talking about animation, how everything is just sort of looking the same. Like you got Disney and Pixar, and I mean, we talked about the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse trailer.
Oh, that looks good.
We're giving it a lot of points because it really looks different. Like it's got different timing in the animation. It's got different styling. It doesn't look like I'm going to quote Hammond here. It doesn't look like a Dixar movie.
Nice.
Oh, that's funny.
Right.
I thought it was pretty good.
True story.
But even some of the Universal and the Sony stuff. Well, okay. Spider-Man Sony, but like some of the other movies over the last few years, it's really looking kind of homogenized. Whereas this Addams Family thing, I'm giving it a lot of props for like being weird,
unique,
like
looking.
Really
cool.
weird.
I want to take a look. That's great.
I'm looking forward to that. Didn't mean to sidetrack there. I was just excited about it. It's been sitting in my head. So okay, so Maria, I got to ask you a question. I got to ask you. So I love your work, and a lot of it looks like classic mediums, like watercolors, and it just looks like there's a lot of hand drawn stuff to it. But I know you're working digital, right?
Yeah. So a friend of mine, I didn't coin this phrase, but I'm going to totally steal it. So I consider myself a tradigital artist now.
Nice.
Because I like both, and I was hand inking half full for a really long time, and then scanning everything, coloring it in Photoshop. And a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, I bought an iPad Pro, and this was before Procreate had layers and could accept Photoshop files back and forth. So I used it, and I was like, this is in a really expensive Etch-a-Sketch, and I brought it back. So then a friend of mine got it, and he's like, oh, yeah, Procreate has layers and whatever. I was like, what? Oh, and that changed everything. So now I draw the comic entirely on the iPad Pro. I also have a Cintiq desktop, which I end up using for the tweaking and the final. So I kind of rely on both devices. But the portability of the iPad Pro is incredible. And I use watercolor. So a lot of the sketches from my trip, the stuff that looks watercolory is actual watercolor. I know a lot of people can do that digitally. I love traditional media, so I want to use it as much as possible. I just draw my comic in black and white and color, panel and strip format, RGB and CMYK. So for me to do that traditionally would just, I think, take me forever. So it works really well. And a friend of mine explained this cool method, which I've been using for the last couple months, where I draw, it's almost like, imagine like a cross template. So I draw like the panel and the strip at the same time and then cut them out. Like, so it's like I have the main focal area in the panel part, and then it's almost like I'm looking at Letterboxd TV. I will stretch it out and add more to, kind of stretch out the panel or move things around if necessary. Right. And then I chop it up in Photoshop. So I love, and Procreate is incredible. I absolutely love drawing on it. I think, there's the debate. A couple things about digital gets me sad. Like when I go to the Billy Ireland Cartoon Museum in Ohio, which I highly recommend if you guys haven't been there, because your mind gets blown by the originals they have. I'm thinking, someday, what are we going to have? Like walls of computers. And it's so different. Like walls of iPads, and it's so different. Even I saw a George Booth exhibit at Society of Illustrators, and it was like, in certain places he redrew a dog and just cut it out and pasted it, and it's covered with tape and whiteout and little hand notes, and that is so incredible to me. I never want to lose that, but at the same time, I love digital. Oh, and the other thing with it too, like the idea of being able to undo. I was working on a watercolor painting once, and I'm pretty bad. Like I have a bad tendency to smear things and like blop ink. So I'm doing this painting of something like a scene from Paris, and I blopped ink, and I was like, oh crap, right, now what? So I try and dab it up, and I was like, well, I'll just turn it into this like spiral sun thing, and I love it. Like I love that weird spiral sun thing that I would have never put there. And if I had undo, I would have just undid the blop, right?
Yeah,
so,
Bob Ross would be all like happy accident up in here, right? He would be so happy, right?
Right, exactly. No, none of those. So I'm torn. And all of this said, in another week, I might turn around and be like, forget digital. I'm doing all traditional. So I don't like, this is not like, I feel like it's a constant evolution. But at this exact moment today, I am drawing on the iPad and I really enjoy it. And it's fun.
I like that attitude because a lot of people feel like they've got to pick a lane and stick with it. But it's just another medium that we get an opportunity to work with.
Exactly. I kind of like, you could use a colored pencil, you could use charcoal, you can use a brush, you could use digital. I mean, in the end, it is a tool, and it has incredible benefits. And even the idea of working very quickly, or people who do live drawing, like at events, how great that you can live draw on an iPad and in a second just blast it out to social media without scanning and clean, So I think there's benefits to both.
And you are at least the sixth or seventh artist that I've talked to that has made a big switch to an iPad Pro specifically, more so for Procreate. Like that iPad Pro Procreate kind of flows right out in one sentence usually. And former guest Nicholas Cole, that's his whole. He doesn't actually use anything else. He does all of his professional work in Procreate on an iPad. It was, and it suits his. He has to be mobile, style, he has to flip back and forth between countries. He's moving around a lot. Like you can't do that with a 30-pound Cintiq or a 60-pound Cintiq. Like there's certain things that you cannot do.
It's wonderful on an airplane. It's amazing.
Exactly. And in terms of just like. We pointed out earlier the amount of work that cartoonists have to do. The amount of time is sitting and drawing is terrible for you. That's why you bike to do errands so that you can
exactly.
Be a healthy person. But with an iPad Pro, like you can, even if it's just sitting outside, you can have that change. You can have that that shift. You can stand up. You can it is of no consequence to just pick it up and take it to the library if that's what you need.
I do have a question about. I do have a question about that because I have struggled my entire life to find some medium that I could use outside without feeling like I want to murder everyone. Because I've tried, I've done sketchbooks, but I always feel like the wind is always just against me, and I always feel like the sun is always just glaring off the paper. And maybe it's because I have blue eyes. I don't know, but I feel like everything I do outside, if I try to paint, there's a bug always. I'm like, get off! Just is it just me? Am I just an indoor person? Okay, so right. So the iPad Procreate, can you see that outside in a sufficient enough light to be able to?
Well, you want to be in the shade.
Right.
I've sat at under an umbrella. The beach that's nearby has this really beautiful porch area with umbrellas and tables. I think as long as you're out of direct sun, I think it's a little difficult to see in direct sun.
Yeah, I find that all Apple products, even inside in bright light, are pretty reflective. Like they've got a pretty good shine to them. Like I keep my studio dim when I'm using my iMac because I find that it reflects light pretty readily.
Yeah, I think so too. I know. Yeah, the bug thing in the wind. I don't know about that, but
right. You live in the South. I can't help it. I just my life.
The airplane thing. I love to travel, and I don't think I'd be able to travel the way that I do without using the iPad, because I got my cartoon when I was coming back from that trip. It was a 7-hour flight. I got my cartoons for the week done, basically on the flight home, which was amazing. So, and then I had horrible jet lag for a week. I was practically like in a coma. So it was good that I got the stuff done, and then I could be a zombie for a few days after that, which was great. So the convenience factor is huge. And I think it opens doors to do even more work if you can, tighten up your workload. And I don't, oh, sorry, go ahead. No,
I was going to say it leads into a really good, my next question, which I was going to ask you about how you balance your workload of being a syndicated cartoon as well as a healthy dose of licensed work on a daily basis. Do you work, 5 days a week, 7 days a week? Do you how do you do it? How do you balance all of it?
It's kind of like, I guess 70. I don't know how to answer this. I'm stumbling because I'm trying to come up with a good answer. I feel like as I'm walking through life, I'm thinking all the time, right? So I take down notes in sketchbooks as I'm going. If I go for a run, I'll tell Siri in my phone. I'll say new note and just take down a cartoon idea. Right. And sometimes Siri really screws it up. I've told this story before. One time I go in my notes and I see claustrophobic tomato. No idea what that was. It was like he screwed up the words, whatever it was, and came up with that. But I think that I generally am sort of in thought mode, writing, taking notes, and I try not to work all weekend, but inevitably I end up working Saturday or Sunday. But if I hit a wall, like during the week, if I know, like if I've been pushing myself too hard, sometimes I know I just need to take a break and do administrative stuff or go run errands or even just do nothing. So I know that I can try and push myself and and then there's a point of no return where my brain's that's it, we're done. Sorry, can't do it. So, and I try and keep it. I try and do my comics Monday into Tuesday and then open up the rest of the week for other things. But then life happens. If I travel, that will change. And then, at the Rubens, I didn't have a thought for a week the whole time I was there. And I was concerned when I got home because usually I'm sort of thinking, jotting notes. I didn't think, which was good because I think that's also important to kind of actually turn your brain off for a period of time as well.
You sound like you're a very you're type of worker who is adaptable. You just you kind of fly by the seat of your pants. But if you have that ability to do it, that's great. I was just curious if you're a more structured, rigid kind of person like Joel, or if you were more just do it as you need because
I guess it's both. I mean, I'm sort of giving you two answers, but I think it's a little bit of both. I have a structure that I try and follow, but I guess I'm not so rigid that if the structure needs to bend, I'll bend. Good. But I would say that I have a structure in place because if it was just all over the place, I probably wouldn't.
Well, you saw our show notes for this podcast. We have a skeleton of a show in our show notes and our questions, and then we just kind of go from there. It's good. It's good to be free. Yeah, it's good to be free.
It's a good thing.
I like that. Yeah. So, all right. So we got about 15 more minutes of the show. This is usually part of the show that I start to like to talk a little bit about maybe some advice for our aspiring cartoonists out there looking at maybe getting into magazine work or syndicated comics or just being an artist in general. I think Joel has some questions in that area.
Okay.
Well, yeah, one of the things that I've been actually hearing a lot of, I've been listening to some other illustration podcasts and realizing that I focus so much on web stuff that I often forget about magazines. I've never been a magazine reader, but I'm just curious for artists out there that are interested in getting their illustrations or comics printed in magazines. Any advice for getting into the industry, like breaking in or getting your work in front of the people that make those decisions?
Sure. On most magazine websites, there's a little submission guidelines on the bottom of the website. So that's your starting point. And really, it's just keep submitting and submitting and submitting and submitting and forget about rejection. Forget about the fact that you're sending things off into the ether and you may never hear a word. That's just the way it is. So just keep submitting. That's all, that's all there is. And rejection sometimes, if you don't get something in one place, sometimes it can end up somewhere else, even in another format. So I feel like nothing's ever lost. And if it's a piece of work that never ends up anywhere, it's still a stepping stone to the next piece of work. So none of it's ever really like a waste of time, even though sometimes it feels like that when you're sending things out and you just hear symphonies of crickets, which I get plenty of. But
like throwing snowballs at a fire sort of idea.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Now, is there?
I'm going to keep
any...
my eye on that comic. That better not.
That I know. Just wait. About 6 weeks from now.
Right. He's not watching. He's not watching now. He's surely got bored by now. Go ahead.
In that respect, like, I mean, that's, basically hitting the pavement, so to speak. But when you started licensing your work with greeting card companies, did you have the same approach, or did they approach you?
Well, let's see. In the beginning, it was submitting. I think it was something like 5 years to get into recycled paper greetings. And the woman that picked up the phone, I had called at one point, and there was a woman who picked up the phone, and she said she didn't like my style. Right?
Ouch.
Just like my whole being, like my everything about me. She just didn't like anything about. And the funny thing was, she wasn't even an art director. I found out she did contracts and then had left the company. So it ended up about me getting in front of someone who's like, "Oh, I love everything you do. That's great," which worked out. And then there was the company I have in the UK found my work somewhere online. They approached me. So it was a little bit of both, but generally it was doing same thing with licensing. There's little submission guidelines on most of the sites, and pitch, and it takes a long time usually. Maybe, if you get lucky, I guess it can be short, but the pitches, I think, take a while. It takes like a couple months to get into sort of their cycle of things, but same thing, just keep pitching. And I would also say, especially with licensing, go to stores and see where your work might fit in. So I'm never going to pitch a greeting card company that does photos of animals, because that's not what I do. But if I see somebody, companies that deal with humor and I think my style will fit. And I used to go in and for things like mugs, I would go to a store and flip the mug over and be like, "Oh, what company is this? What do they make?" I could see my stuff on this. And I also walked the licensing expo in Las Vegas. I exhibited there as well 1 year. And then there's something called Surtex and the National Stationery Show that happens in New York, which unfortunately, when they started, it cost artists $75 to walk the show. Now it's $600. Because the people who had tables, I don't go anymore. The people who had tables, I guess, got annoyed because other people would try and make deals on the floor, and they were paying all this money to have a table. So
that is insane.
Yeah, I know. It's too bad because it was a great resource, mostly to see what types of companies were out there and the kind of work that they produce. Because otherwise, you're sort of wasting everybody's time if it's such an oddball fit. Like if there's a company that does like religious stuff that will never ever do humor, there's no point in submitting to them. But I just think it's really, it's like the age old, it's like persistence.
Right.
Just keep going.
So is there any place in the market anymore with how digital we are to get like the writer's market or the artist market books? Remember those things?
I do.
Yeah. Do you still get one?
I don't, but one of my first jobs in an animation studio was because there used to be a version called the Cartoonist Market a really long time ago that I had, and I found an animation studio nearby, and that's how I found that job. But I didn't even know that they still publish that, which is
They
funny.
probably don't. I'm just thinking that so every time I think there's not something that's being published, someone goes, "Oh, yeah, Brian, they still publish that."
Oh, well, that's good. It's probably still a good resource. It mentions like all different other places. And
if you've never seen one, it's the most boring book you've ever seen in your life. It's just a list of names. It's not even as good as a phone book. It's just there's still a writer's market. You can actually order the ebook. Good. Yeah, let me see if there's a artist market still. Just curious. I don't know.
I'm always surprised when I get a phone book delivered to my driveway.
I know.
I'm very surprised by that. Still.
Mine, there was a phone book out in front of my mailbox. I don't even know if they're not allowed to even put them in my mailbox now or something. But I was like, "What is this trash? Get it out of here! Who am I going to call?" And a phone book. That's crazy. No, I don't see it. Well, I don't really see an artist market, but the writers they still seem to like their books apparently. So, go figure.
Well, that's good.
Right. Excellent.
Yeah.
I think I think we have had an excellent show. I think we are about to wrap this up. I miss Matt, and I know he's at least going to be here to anchor in our last question of the show, because that's what Matt does.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt. It's always such gold when we get
right
when we get a guest who's so talkative. I love it.
I do that. Sorry.
No,
that's
it's
a good
fantastic.
thing.
I love it. I get to just sit back and watch the fireworks. It's lovely. But anyway, I do have one question that I get to cram in every show.
Okay.
And so, are there any artists that our listeners should be aware of and should be following?
There are so many, and I can't. I know, and there's this weird Jedi mind trick that happens when someone's like, "Who's your favorite artist?" And I have no idea. But when I saw this in your notes, I thought immediately of my friend Ann Telnis, who is doing some incredible political work and knocking it out of the park. And you can find her on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and she's also and in the Washington Post every day.
Oh,
so,
nice.
And her, it's ANNTELNAES, and she's doing just absolutely wonderful. And she does everything by hand, all hand drawn with watercolor, and animated pieces too, which are really incredible. So I would check her out.
Better check that out right now. See if I
love her Barack Obama. Wow.
Oh, her everything, really. Her the Trump stuff she's been doing, everything she's been doing is really incredible.
Oh, yeah, I do like this. Is that a real book, Trump's ABCs, or is that?
Yeah, it just came out. Yep, and I have it. And she also won the Reuben. Was it last? My timeline's off. Last year, yeah, and a Pulitzer Prize. So yeah, she's definitely worth checking out, and an amazing person as well. So
absolutely, yeah. You were at the Reubens with her because is that right?
There's a photo of me and my friend her and Barbara and I. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw. I think it was. I was meant to ask you about that pushy, nasty woman or something like that. I think was the.
Oh well.
The caption.
She shortly after that whole nasty woman thing.
Yeah.
She bought a T-shirt that said "nasty woman," and then she encouraged a whole bunch of us to also buy it. So it's been sort of an ongoing joke.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it. Anytime you can turn somebody else's words around and go, oh, you know what? I'm going to own this. I'm going to put it on a shirt.
Yep.
Kiss my butt.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, Maria, is there anything upcoming that you're allowed to talk about or would like to talk about before we end the show?
There's some really exciting things upcoming, but I'm not ready to talk about them yet. And I will when the time is right. But
excellent.
That's where I'm going to leave it. So some really exciting things are happening in the near future. But
nice. Well, when you do have details, send us a line, and we'll be happy to promote it on the show or have you back. Whatever you.
Oh, I'd love it. That's awesome. Thank you. That's great. Perfect.
Our pleasure.
It's been a great show, Maria. Thank you so much
guys.
for being on.
This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Would love to do it again. And if you're looking for this show and others, head on over to comicscoasttocoast.com. We have over 330 some odd episodes there. Joel Duggan, where can people visit you?
They can visit me at joelduggan.com. I am having some issues with my gallery, so if you want to go to artstation.com/joelduggan, you can see my art there. But everything else, all the other contact information, including blog posts and things like that, is at joelduggan.com. My name on Instagram and Twitter. And while you're out there looking for cool stuff to look at, check out forgepublishing.com. We're getting kind of low on Piper's books, so if you're interested in picking one up, I'm happy it's selling so well, but I'm a little concerned that we're running out so quickly. So if you're humming and hawing, then you may want to go and check out forgepublishing.com quickly. And as far as upcoming stuff, next week we're going to be talking to Derek Loffman here on Comics Coast to Coast. It's going to be his second time on the show. He has a new comic that is being published. Remember Ruin World? Well, Boom Studios picked that up. So he's got that coming out. We're going to talk to him about that and all that process and when and how people can get their hands on Ruin World. Excellent. Matthew Ducharme.
Best place to see my work is on YouTube. Just do a search for Matt the Wad or Matthew Ducharme.
Excellent. You can follow me, Brian Dunaway, on Twitter at the Brian Dunaway. That's it. Thank you for listening to Comics Coast to Coast, episode 331. I ended it different, Joel, just to mess with you.
I was wondering. I was like, is it over now? What about now? He hasn't said anything. I don't know.
And we'll see you guys next week. Ha!
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.